Okay, and welcome back to the next part of our tutorial series. Today we are going to be focusing on combat and health systems. Now these are pretty complex topics, and there are a lot of different ways that you might implement this within your game, but I'm going to show you some basic ideas and then how I want to implement it for my game, and hopefully that will give you enough that you can develop a system that works for what you need. As you can see, I've added a couple of assets here. There's a health character, which shows a heart here. And in costumes, you can see I have a full heart, a half heart, and an empty heart. Now, one simple way to do health is that I could take this heart full, I could duplicate it, select the heart, and then duplicate this as well using the copy and paste. And I could set this up as a second heart. And then I could duplicate it again and make a third heart and just switch between the costumes. That could be a simple way of managing health within your game. However, in my case, I want the half hearts to work as well, so I need a more complex system to manage hearts. If I go back to code, I'm going to begin with some of the typical code that makes it so that the hearts won't show up until it's on this screen. So in my case, I only want the hearts to appear on the combat arena and not on the other maps. So for example, when flag clicked, I want to make sure that it is hidden. Similarly, when the backdrop switches to Crystal Cave, which is the map before this, I want to make sure it is hidden. And when it switches to this map, which is the combat arena, I actually still want it to be hidden. I also want to add a variable called player health. This should be a variable for all sprites in case we need it elsewhere in the game. And I'm going to set that to 6. I'm setting it to 6 because I want the player to have 3 hearts, and each heart could have an empty heart, a half a heart, or a full heart. So if the player health is 1, it would just show half a heart. If it was 2, it would show a whole heart. 3, it would show a heart and a half, etc. Next, we're going to use a custom block. We haven't touched custom blocks yet, but what a custom block does is it lets you make a scratch piece of code. You define it once, what happens in that block, and then you can use it many times in different places. So I'm going to make a block, which I'm going to call player health. And this is important. It needs to run without screen refresh. This will enable this block to run more often than the screen actually updates. Usually in a game, your screen will update maybe 30 times a second or 60 times a second. We want to make sure that this has already run by the time that the game updates the screen. So we'll hit OK, and you'll see it gave a block called a define player health. We're going to use this to actually say what happens when this player health block is run. I'm going to go ahead and build a version of this that works for me. And so to do that, I want to make sure first that the heart goes to the right starting position, which would be -219, -163. And then I need to set a variable called clone number. So I'm going to make a variable. It can be for this sprite only. And it's going to say player health clone number. Remember that variables are a good way of keeping track of information in your game. All right, just like we're using a variable to keep track of our health, this variable will help us to keep track of which heart we're talking about. So I want to set this to be 1 right at the beginning. So we're dealing with the first heart. Player health clone number to 1. And then I want to repeat until player health clone number is equal to, that's an operator, equal to 4. So I'm going to set it to 1 and then repeat until it's 4. And in that repeat, I want to check a few things. I want to check what the health of the player is to see which kind of heart it should be. So I need to go to if, and then I want to check if player health, variable player health, is greater than, and this is a little bit complex. I could just set this to if player health is greater than 1, then it shows a full heart. If player health is 1, then it would show half a heart. And if player health is less than 1, it would show an empty heart because they would have 0 health, right? In this case, I'm actually going to do something a little more complicated, but makes my code cleaner. You don't have to understand this or use this system, but this works for me and for the half hearts that I have. So I'm going to check if player health is greater than, but I want to check if it's greater than 2 times the player health clone number minus 1. So 2 times the player health clone number minus 1. This essentially makes it so that this system will work for any heart. And it doesn't matter if this is the first heart, the second heart, or the third heart. It will automatically figure out whether it's a full heart, a half heart, or an empty heart. So this is the one that will check for a heart full, which means we need to switch the costume to be heart full. Okay, so then I need to duplicate this. This will check for the full heart. I now need to check for the half heart. So instead of greater than, I actually want this to be equals. If player health equals this, then we should switch to half heart. And then I duplicate it again. If player health is less than, it's less than this, then we want to switch it to be the empty heart. Okay, the last thing I need to do, and this is one of the most important parts, is I need to create a clone of myself. So in control here, there's an option to create a clone. What do clones do? A clone is a useful way of essentially making a copy of something. So if, for example, you had a bunch of bats in your game, instead of manually adding 15 bats, you could instead have a single sprite that is a bat, and you just make 15 clones of it that act independently of each other. In this case, I want to create a clone of myself, and then I want to make sure to change this player health clone number by 1. What this does is that essentially it's going to make the first heart, check and see how much health you have and make it the correct kind of heart, and then make that clone of itself. Once it's done that, it then sets the clone number to 2, which will make this run again for the second heart, and then run again for the third heart. But then it won't run again after that because I have it set to max out at 4. The last thing we need to do is change the X by 30. This will essentially move this heart over to the next one so that when we spawn the next clone, it'll spawn next to this first heart. All right, and then lastly, I want to make sure this is hidden just in case. And I actually think I need all of this to be inside this repeat. There we go. The last thing we need is to make sure that these clones that we're making get deleted each time we go to update our health. So I'm going to make another custom block, and I'm going to call it delete all clones. And this one also needs to run without screen refresh. That's why we're making these custom blocks. So delete all clones can go here at the top. And what it's going to do is it's going to delete this clone. So in control, there's an option to delete this clone. This means that every time we run player health, it will update by deleting all the hearts and then putting new hearts based on the health of our player. Right now we have player health set to run right at the beginning, but we also need the health of our player to update when we take damage. So I'm going to add an event called when I receive a message. What a message does is it allows you to send a message at some point in your code, and that message is then broadcasted to everywhere else in your code, in your game. So in this case, in health, I want when I receive, and I'm going to make a new message, and I'm going to call this take damage. So when I receive take damage from somewhere else in my code, I haven't set that up yet, then I want it to also run this player health. That way this player health and the hearts will update when I take damage. The last thing I need to do is add a delete all clones here to Crystal Cave so that when I leave this screen, all of the hearts also disappear. Now this is good, but if you look, we've been hiding everything. We need to show the clones once they come into existence. So I'm going to go to Control, and there's an option for when I start as a clone. This is where, for example, if you had 15 bats, you would define what do the bats do when they begin as a clone. In this case, when I start as a clone, the only thing I need it to do is to show. And now, if I leave and enter this screen, the hearts should update correctly. Let's try that. We can ignore the boulder. That's not set up yet. But as I come through my game, and I enter the combat arena here, we should see those hearts show up. And there they are. Now I could test this. I could have this change to maybe 3, and then I want to see it switch to a heart and a half when I leave and come back. So when I leave, the hearts disappear. And when I come back, it shows up as 1.5 hearts. Good. I'm going to set this back to 6 so I don't forget it. Now I have an enemy health here. I'm going to use the same system to run the enemy health. To do that, I can actually take the code that is here and copy it over to the enemy health sprite. So for example, if I come in here and I click on when flag is clicked, that selects this set of code. And now I could press Command C to copy that part of code, go to the enemy health, and press Command V to paste it, just like you copy and paste in other applications. Let me go back. I can select each of these, copy, paste, and I'm going to bring all of it over. Okay, so now all the code is here, but it's still referring to player health and player health clone number. So we need to update some of these variables to be enemy health. I'm going to go over to my variables section, and I'm going to create a variable for all sprites called enemy health or boss health or whatever you want to call it. And then I need to make a variable for this sprite only, which will be enemy health clone number. And now I'm going to replace these with the appropriate variables. So player health clone number, I can right click on this and make this enemy health clone number. Same here, enemy health clone number. I'm going to make this enemy health. I didn't mean to click that. We can ignore that for now. Enemy health, and enemy health clone number. And then we want to set this to enemy health as well. I think I want my enemy to have 5 hearts, so I'm going to give it 10 health to start. The last thing is that my heart, if I show it, you'll see that they're all down here, which is not the right position. So I actually want this heart to be up in the top corner here. I'm going to leave this screen real quick and come back just so it updates. So I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to update this initial position here to be the new spot in the corner. So make that 2, 2, 3 and 1, 6, 2. And then I want to change this x by -30. So the hearts will go to the left this time. The last thing we need to do is this still says player health. That's technically fine, but I would like to go ahead and edit the name to say enemy health, just so it is clearer what is happening here. Enemy health, and delete all clones. So I now have a fairly complex health system that shows hearts and half hearts. If I leave and re-enter, all the hearts should disappear, and then as I come back, we should see the hearts show up. You notice only 3 hearts showed up. That's because we haven't changed this number. So instead of enemy health clone number equals 4, I want it to go all the way to 6 so that it'll run 5 times and make 5 hearts. If I click this, you'll see there it is, 5 hearts. And if I set the health to be something like 7 and then ran this, you would see it does 3.5 hearts. Now I don't like that the half heart is on this side. So in this case, I'm going to go to my costume and I'm just going to flip this heart to be the other way. I could actually make a better version of this in pixel art, but for now, this is fine. And this should work no matter what my health is set to. So if I set it to 3, and then I click on this, it should update. There we go. Looking good. I'm going to set this back to 10. The last thing we need to update is this says when I receive take damage. But take damage is the one for our player. So we actually need a new message, which is going to be attack enemy. Or enemy take damage, something like that. Okay, we now have a fully working health system. I'm going to go ahead and hide these health clone numbers. I don't need them to show up. Just the player health and enemy health is fine. And now we need to make it so that the enemy can attack me and I can attack the enemy. To do that, I'm going to work on this boulder. I've decided that my enemy, what he's going to do is he's going to throw boulders at me. So first, when the backdrop switches to the main title, we want to make sure it's hidden just like usual. And when it switches to the map before this, which is Crystal Cave, we want to make sure that's hidden too. Lastly, when backdrop switches to this map, which is the combat arena, I want it to be hidden. And then I want it to be continuously throwing boulders at me. So I'm going to add a forever. And in that forever, I want it to first wait a few seconds so the player can get used to what's happening. So let's add a wait. Maybe we'll wait 3 seconds. And then I want it to throw the boulder at me, but only if I have health left and the enemy has health left. So to do that, I'm going to add an if. And we're going to use some more complex operators. You'll see there's an and or options here. We're going to use and we're going to be checking if the player health and enemy health are both more than 0. So if this is greater than 0, that's greater than 0. And then we need player health greater than 0, enemy health greater than 0. So if both of these are true, this is true and this is true, then we're going to once again create a clone. Again, this lets multiple of these things run at a time. I could do this without creating a clone and just manually move the boulder, hide it, move it back again and again. But in this case, I just want to do it with a clone. So we can add this after the wait. And then I think I also want it to wait a second afterwards to make sure everything has run and updated, and that will make it 4 seconds in between each boulder. So now we can use this when I start as a clone, just like we did before with the hearts. And I want to set it so that it goes to an original starting position of about there. Okay, I experimented with it a little bit, and I want it to start at 127 and 28. So now we want it to appear with a show. It'll show up, and then I want it to kind of go up a little bit and then come towards the player, where the player is at that moment. So I'm going to repeat 4 times. And in that repeat, what I want to happen is it should wait a very small amount of time just so that all of the steps up don't happen at the same time. So I want it to wait 0.03 seconds, 0.03, a very small amount of time, and then change the Y, so change how much up and down it is, by 3. I think this should make it 4 times. It'll kind of jump up a little bit, which will look like it's being launched in the air. And then I want it to come towards me. To do that, we're going to use this glide. And I want it to glide to not a random position, but to my main character, which is Caveman. So not in the repeat. After it goes up, I want it to glide, and I think I want it to glide over maybe 1.4 seconds. You can experiment with these kinds of numbers if you have a system like this until you have something that looks right. Lastly, after it has glided to the character, I want it to check to see if it is actually touching the character. So it'll start gliding. If the player moves out of the way, then they won't get damaged. But if they get hit by the boulder, if the boulder lands on them, then I want them to take damage. So I'm going to add an if, and we're going to set this to be if touching Caveman. So if touching my main character, then we need to do 2 things. We should change the player health by -1. So this will make my player's health go down 1, which is equivalent to half a heart. Then we need to actually broadcast. In our health, we have it set when it receives take damage, it does certain things. Here is where we're going to broadcast take damage so that the health will then update elsewhere in our game. So broadcast take damage. And then after it's done that, regardless of if it's touching the caveman, I want to delete this clone. So that'll make this clone go away. This is good. And if I leave Crystal Cave Arena and then come back, it should automatically work. So now the enemy should start throwing boulders at me. That looks pretty good. I took damage. Nice to see. And if I leave, it should reset. Ah, but you see, he's still throwing boulders at me. Why is this happening? Well, because we have it set to forever make these clones of myself. So in this case, I need 2 things. I need one of these stop blocks. I don't want it to stop everything in my game, but I do want it to stop other scripts in this sprite. So when we switch to the Crystal Cave, it should stop this, it should stop that, it should stop all of these other parts. And then I want it to also delete any clones that are currently visible. Now, If I go back in, okay, I can see the system works. When he throws a boulder, if I get out of the way, I don't take damage. And if I leave, the boulder gets deleted, and he's no longer throwing boulders at me on the other map. If I go back in, my health should reset. Great. Now I would like this system to have a visual representation of me taking damage. Right now, when I get hit, my health changes, but there's no other sign that I'm injured. So I'm going to go to my main player, and I want my main player to flash on the screen a couple of times when I take damage. So I can use this same broadcasted message when I receive take damage. I could have it repeat, and maybe I want it to flash 6 times. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the brightness. So that's one of these effects. I can change brightness effect by 25, sure. And then again by minus 25. So it'll get much brighter and then darker again. Now, right now, it's going to do this immediately. So we need to add some weights in here as well. So I'm going to wait. And this one can probably also be like 0.05 seconds. Let's put one after each of these change brightness. And now if I run this, you'll see my character kind of flashes 6 times, which shows that I take damage. This should run every time I get hit by a boulder. So if I leave the map and then come back, let's see what happens. He should throw a boulder at me. I flash a few times and I took half a heart of damage. Looks good. So this is good. He can attack me, but I can't attack him yet. I have added in my main character some costumes. I have my normal 4 positions, left, right, up, and down, but I've also added versions of each of these with a weapon. And you'll notice they line up. So first I have down, and then if I go up by 4 costumes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I have down with a weapon. 2 is to the right. 6 is to the right with a weapon. 3 to the left, and then attacking with a weapon. 4 up and attacking with a weapon. This is good, but I need to make a system where if I'm on this screen, I want my character to show that attack animation when I click. So I'm going to add this also into my character. I'm going to add a when flag clicked, and then I want it to forever be checking if, and then I want this if the backdrop number of the stage, which should be here in sensing, there it is, if backdrop number of stage is equal to operator, and I think this one is number 5. So if backdrop number of stage equals 5, then if your mouse is clicked, should be a sensing, mouse down, I want it to do a few things. First, it should switch the costume number, should switch the costume to be, I could either set it to be a manual one, so if I only had 1 attack costume, I could do that. But in this case, I actually just want to take the costume number and add 4 to it. So let's do that. Let's take costume number and operator plus, so costume number plus 4, and we'll switch to that costume. So now, no matter which way I'm facing, it'll add 4, which ends up being the combat costume. There it is. When my mouse is held down, it does it. Now, in this case, I actually want it to swing the weapon and then automatically go back to the default position after a certain amount of time. We also need to add the check to see if we're close enough to the enemy that I can actually damage it. So let's add an if, switch costume, and then if the distance to the purple slime monster is less than, and I think for me it's probably going to be about 75, though again, it might be different for you. If the distance to the slime monster is less than 75, then we need it to do, just like we did before, change enemy health. There it is, enemy health by -1. And we broadcast the message attack enemy, which will make the enemy's health update. Okay. So change enemy health by -1, broadcast attack enemy. Then I want it to automatically switch back after a certain amount of time. So I'm going to add a wait. This will be not in the distance one. I want this to happen no matter what if the mouse is down. So the mouse goes down, switches costume, checks to see if it does damage, and then I want it to wait maybe, I think 0.22 seconds is what I found to be good. And then once again, we need to switch the costume back. So we're going to make this, instead of +4, we're going to make it a plus -4. That could also be a minus and then a 4, but this works too. So switch costume to costume number -4. All right, then I want it to wait again, 0.4 seconds, so that the player can't just attack over and over and over again. They have to wait a little bit of time before they can attack again. So now if I click, if I start this script and then click, there's the attack. I think in my case, I need to get rid of this last direction block. So I'm going to do that. There we go. That looks right. So as I attack, if I'm facing down and I attack, it does the correct one. If I face left, if I face up. Great. And if I'm close enough to the slime monster when I attack, it does damage. Very good. If I come up here and attack, it doesn't do damage. But if I go here, there we go. I can damage him. So now I think I want him to flash when he takes damage just like we do. So I'm going to select this when I receive take damage, copy it, and paste it on the slime monster. Instead of take damage, this needs to say attack enemy. So if I attack enemy successfully, then he flashes as he takes damage. And maybe I don't want this to run as many times. Great. Okay. So this has been a basic, simple system for combat, including both hearts and a health system, and the actual attacks between my main character and the boss. At this point, it would be fairly simple to add death animation. I could create a version of this purple slime monster where it's dead, and I could have it switch to that costume when enemy health reaches 0. Similarly, for my player, I could add a death animation, and when the player health equals 0, I could then pull up the lose screen for my game. Hopefully with this tutorial, you have enough information that you should be able to build combat in your game if your game needs it. I hope this tutorial was useful, and I will see you in the next one.